Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. What a funny Monday we're all having. I'm here with my friend and colleague, Dr. Guillermo Ruiz. He's here in Arizona, but he just was sharing with me that their practice went on to telemedicine starting today for at least a couple of weeks. So welcome, Dr. Ruiz.
Hello, how's it going? It's been a very interesting weekend.
It has been. I know. I feel like what I've said, I feel like we're waiting for like a hurricane to land. Like everybody's like
Yeah,
staring
and
down.
it's funny, in Florida, so I have been through a
Oh,
couple of hurricanes, and that's exactly the feeling. And I think that I maybe people here in Arizona are not used to the whole prepping stuff,
true.
but it feels just like that, like we're waiting for a hurricane, just sitting. The sun is shining, the weather is beautiful, and here we are, hunkered down in our homes.
Yeah, and Arizona is kind of I feel like a unique place. Like so inland, there's really not much earthquakes or not much like anything. But now, and you were just mentioning our stats here in Arizona. I do think areas more inland have so far been less cases of coronavirus. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that's why we're here. We want to discuss this little tiny microscopic. Some people call it living. Some people don't think viruses are alive. But this little thing has really, caused a commotion. Um, I have my phone because I do want to quote a couple of stats, during this Facebook Live. But yeah, so as of 9 o'clock, so 36 minutes ago, there has been 18 cases, and so in Arizona, 6 cases have been swabbed by a commercially available laboratory, 12 by the Arizona State Public Health Department, with a total case number of 18 and 0 deaths so far. So that's pretty good. And then 8 of the cases have been in Maricopa County, and the rest all around,
Okay.
the different counties. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I know we're, broadcasting to lots of people all over the country and probably some outside, but I'm curious. Yeah, I'm interested to know, what's happening here in our local community, certainly.
Yeah,
Um,
and
Go
it's
ahead.
it's interesting to have this snapshot, and because we can track cases from all over the country, but it's going to be very interesting to have this snapshot right now as of the Monday the 16th at 9:30 a.m. and see how it exponentially will grow, or if we're going to be able to stop it. And so hopefully these numbers, we're expecting these numbers to go up because we are not testing as aggressively as South Korea, so we do think that these numbers will go up. But with all the precautions people are taking, hopefully we can flatten that curve and prevent this from becoming a problem like it was in Italy.
Yes, I agree. And we were talking before we came on, that there was, pushback probably even as recently as last week. But people aren't really pushing back so much now, which I think is great because we really do have to get ahead of it. We can't wait to like, oh gosh, it's everywhere. Now let's all stay home. Like I don't think it quite works like that. And I've been pretty impressed by how quickly the tide has turned. I got into coronavirus early. Well, we'll talk about your history in a minute and why you're a great person to talk to about viruses. But my friend Wendy Myers, who you also might know, was writing about this all pretty early, and we were friends, and we were supposed to go to a conference together, and she canceled, and I was like, oh, I got to take this seriously. But I got food and toilet paper a while ago, and I remember seeing my neighbor in the store, and I'm like, "Oh, are you stocking up?" And he's like, "For what?" Like he didn't even know what I was talking about. So it definitely was kind of like late to catch around here, and then it just like went crazy. Everybody was stocking up. My son's school, as of Saturday, I think, was saying it wasn't going to close, and because they're already on spring break. And then Sunday, they're like, actually, we are going to close through March. So things change really quickly, huh?
And that makes me very happy because it's like we are actually listening to science. And these are the recommendations that scientists made. And usually when recommendations are made like that, we usually go, well, that applies to, but not to me. Or we try to make excuses, or we try to justify our actions, and we usually just ignore it, and we don't start doing it until it's too late. And there's a quote going around social media, and it's, any action before a pandemic is considered alarmist. Any action after any inaction after a pandemic is considered inadequate.
True.
So hindsight is 2020, and staying safe is always going to be better, because there's very little downside of prepping and staying safe.
No, yeah, you're gonna eat that pasta eventually.
Yeah, gluten-free pasta, you're gonna eat it.
As long as it's gluten-free, yeah. Yeah, I remember a friend of mine, you may know, Sean Tassone, was on Instagram Live talking about South by Southwest was one of the first big things canceled in his city of Austin. And he's like, look, everybody's mad now, but like, if a bunch of people got sick from South by Southwest, you'd also be mad. So
yeah, or paleo effects. I think Keith and Michelle Norris were the first ones to be pretty ahead of the curve, canceling or moving the event to a later date. And it's inconvenient and it stinks. But imagine if they waited, one more day, one more weekend, one more week. That event was going to be canceled, and it was canceled, a couple of weeks before Austin said, you know what, you can't have it. At the point when they canceled it, they allowed to have up to 2,500 people in an area at once. Okay, so events, so you can kind of triage that. You can have someone counting, and then as someone comes in, you can move people around, and you can control in a space 2,500 people. Right now, the recommendations that are coming out are less than 50 people.
Yeah.
Less than 50 people. So it's kind of amazing how well we are understanding and how well we're protecting each other, because that's what matters.
Yeah. And one thing that, everyone has a right to their opinion, but even people in our space, like Dave Asprey and Sayer G and people I really respect, they're like, God, this is so alarmist. It's not that bad. And, but I've been really reading it, and and you have as well. And it's like, yeah, maybe yes. And like, it's going to change quickly. And if you tell people the media is overreacting and they book a bunch of plane tickets and do all this stuff, and like, actually then it's going to be a lot more inconvenient for them. So yeah, I'm glad that people are coming around. So anyway, let's talk about you. So I've kind of known you a little bit, like in this circle. I knew you're a naturopath, but when I went on to be on your podcast last week, you said you're also a virologist, and I was like, well, what great fortune to meet you right now. So tell us more about your training.
Okay, so so I graduated from the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, and during my career at SCNM, I did a lot of viral work. It all started with an offhanded comment in one of the classrooms, and it was, the greatest thing about natural medicines is that they only kill the bad bacteria, and the good bacteria is not affected, and this bacteria cannot become resistant to these natural medicines. It was just like this little comment, and our head of research was like, wait a minute, is this true? So I was in my second year, starting my second year of school, and my second semester, my second quarter. I had just came back from a conference, and in that conference, Rob Wolf and Mark Sisson had said, okay, it's your turn. You are next. We have done what we needed to do. We've helped people. We are doing really great, and we have helped a lot of people. It's the people in the audience that need to pick up that torch and take it. And I was sitting in that audience and I was like,
Mm.
okay, I guess it's my turn. So I came back to the school and I was like, okay, what can we do? And I saw that research could be a great avenue to try to dispel this myth, to try to, help people and to investigate our powerful herbal medicine. So yeah, so with petri dishes and in vitro tests, we started testing all different sorts of herbs for their antimicrobial and antiviral activity, and we started testing it against MRSA, against pseudomonas, and then against viruses like HSV or the herpes virus. Our lab, and we were working with conjunction at ASU, had the ability to test against monkeypox, against coronavirus. And so we've been testing herbs against coronavirus since before 2017. Okay. Against Epstein-Barr, against cancer cells. So we were using all of this traditional knowledge to try to test all of this beautiful medicine against this disease processes. And by doing this, we found a lot of really cool things. For example, we found that some herbs are very, very effective and some herbs that are not. And then we found that depending on the mechanism of action of the herb, the extraction method becomes really, really important. For example, an herb that might be really good for killing bacteria as a tincture might have effectiveness as a tea.
Yeah,
And
you mentioned that to me like recently, and I was totally shocked. I did not know that. Yeah, tell us more about that.
well, yeah, like we were testing things against MRSA, and one of our plants was really good against killing MRSA, and we were using it and reproducing the results, and then one day it stopped working, and we're like, okay, what the heck's going on? And then do we have a contamination in our plates? And we start looking at our notes and we start looking at the different things, and we narrowed down to the tincture. And then we contacted the herbalist, and they decided to change the tincture from using a dried plant to using a fresh plant, because fresh has more life energy, and that little switch from making your tincture with the same amount of ethanol, with the same amount of resting time, from a fresh plant to a dry plant, made made the fresh plant tincture completely inactive. And it makes a lot of sense. There are different chemicals within the plant, and some of them need to be oxidized in order to become active.
Mm.
And in the case of this plant, you really need it. In order for that medicine to be effective, you need to make that medicine with dried plant material.
Mm.
So yeah, so there's a lot of misunderstandings in the herbalist, in the supplement industry, because every single company, every single person believes to have the best thing, but in reality, none of this, not most of it has not been validated.
Yeah, you mentioned to me that there's RNA viruses and DNA viruses, and they also kind of respond differently to different preparations. Can you tell us more about like what that even means, and like where coronavirus fits in this?
Yeah. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the history of coronavirus and what we
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
So let's talk about viruses in general. A virus is this little robot. It's like there's a lot of discussion about, like, are viruses alive or not, because viruses are basically this bio thing, with like proteins, and it's just like this little ball with, or different shapes, with DNA or RNA material inside of it. that just attaches to a cell, and then it goes inside the cell, and it hijacks the nucleus, it hijacks the mitochondria, and it starts replicating, and then more viruses are made, and then they go around and they infect other cells. So it's just like this mechanical thing, that can lay dormant for a very long time, or you can freeze them and then they can become active once again.
Really?
Yeah. So in the lab, so we have this tiny little virus like this, okay, like about an inch high, okay, and they have billions and billions and billions of virus particles, okay, and we keep them in a deep freezer, and we use so a droplet is about 10 picoliters, microliters, 10 microliters, for an experiment where we're doing maybe 10,000 virus experiments. We use around 1 microliter, so a tenth of a droplet of your droplet, and that little thing houses so many viruses, and you can create so many experiments.
Wow.
And what we do, basically, we just freeze it and we keep it in the deep freeze, and whenever we need more, we thaw it a little bit more. Yeah, that's just like that.
Because a lot of people are asking, does heat kill it? So I guess what we're here finding out, cold does not kill it.
Cold does not kill it.
Okay.
Cold does not kill it. Yeah, and I think before we start the conversation, we wanted to do like you asked me to do like what we know, what we don't know, and what can we do, and that's going to land squarely in what we know.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So let me tell you a little story about coronavirus. Okay. So this type of virus, okay, it's an RNA virus. Okay, and so you have DNA, and then there's little thing called RNA, which is like the translation of the blueprint, okay, of what needs to be built in our bodies, proteins, different transmitters, things like that. Okay, so this virus enters the cell and injects its own translation of the blueprint, but it's like playing telephone. Okay, so if you're just giving instructions, okay, without reading the instructions, and you're just repeating what you know, things can get confused, and then that virus is very apt to mutate. And when it mutates, that's when it can jump species, that's when it can become airborne, that's when it can change different things. Now, so we know this about coronaviruses since it's an RNA virus, not a DNA virus. And we can learn a lot from epidemiology and history. So back in the early 2000s, there was an outbreak where a lot of racehorses in Australia were dying, and it was really weird because they were just dying of this respiratory illness, and then epidemiologists went in and they found that one of the horses was kind of resting underneath the shade of a fig tree, and this fig tree had fruit bats, and these fruit bats were eating figs, and they were dropping, and maybe feces, maybe half-eaten figs, and bats are carriers of the family of coronaviruses. Bats are super interesting because they are hosts to a lot of viruses that are very deadly to humans. For example, rabies. And what happens is that the bat downregulates its immune system, and it becomes host to all these different types of viruses. Okay, so when you have this little experiment where you have this little tiny virus that is very apt to mutate, and then you have two different hosts, it jumps species, and then it infects the horse, and now the horse, who doesn't downregulate its immune system, begins to die, because the coronavirus is, we call that an end host, when the virus dies. So then these veterinarians, came in, and those horses were frothing at the mouth, and they were trying to get the secretions, two of them got sick, one of them died, and that was like a really microscopic outbreak of
Mm.
what can happen with the corona family of viruses. So fast forward to, and then we had another epidemic in the Middle East, and then we had the SARS epidemic, and now we have this COVID-19 sickness, okay? And in the city of Wuhan, they have this wet markets where people can go in and they can have, they can buy exotic animals. Now, we are not equipped to talk about it, because that is not our culture. That is not how we grew up.
True.
And my mom was asking me, why would they do that? And I go, well, we can't, and then I said to my mom, we as me, I'm Mexican, and I like cow tongue, and I eat that, and and people from India would think that I was dirty, and that was, and that's my culture, and that's their culture, So they had this exotic animals, and they had what I believe, was this environment where there were bats, there were things like civet cats, and they were pangolins, and just imagine all of these different animals with all of these different viruses that just live in them in a petri dish, kind of combining and recombining. It is meant to happen. It happened with the H1N1 because the flu virus is almost, it's similar to the coronavirus in other than it's a DNA virus, but it jumped species because it mutated and it jumped from pigs to humans. So when we have these petri dishes and things that can change, we can have this mutation and we can have this global pandemics. Now, China has outlawed wet markets, okay, and that is very positive, and that's very good for future pandemics. But we this are going to still go underground, or I hope we take this seriously, and we have very clean conditions for any sort of produce and animals, so we don't have this happen again. So,
well, yeah, I agree with clean conditions with animals for sure. I don't know if this is still accurate, but I read an article on Mercola's site. It was probably 3 weeks old now, though. But they said they found some virus on like dead specimens, but no live animals there. But there's also like a testing lab just a mile away, and they're wondering if it could have come from there. Did you hear anything about that?
well, okay. So the reason you only find the positive result on dead animals is because the coronavirus only lives on very few animals. It shouldn't be on horses. It shouldn't be on humans. So if it jumps species, and so we have three types of hosts. A host, an end host. Okay, and an end host is 100 or close to 100% mortality rate. Okay, like rabies in humans. We have like a 100% mortality rate when it comes to rabies. Okay, and then we have carriers like you and me. If we get coronavirus, there is a 2% chance that we might end up dying, or 0.02% chance that we might end up dying. But okay, that doesn't mean that that it's it's going to stay with us, or that we initiated it. So I want to be 100% clear on this. This is a very easily mutated virus, okay, and I want you to shut down. And anytime anyone says that this is a man created virus, we're not that intelligent. The amount of random chance that would take to create something like this is so exponential that our little human brains cannot do this. This is something, chance, like a lottery. It was just the perfect mutation at the perfect time. So no conspiracies here. This is something that has happened before and will continue to happen if we don't take precautions.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and that's an interesting point because they didn't, this kind of theory didn't really. They said, well, they're testing on primates, so they could be carrying, but it wasn't really detailed. Was it something that they made themselves? I was kind of implied that it was,
Yeah,
and of
and
course
that's the problem. Let's
yeah.
and that's what we know. We're the what we know stack. Okay, so
Okay.
what do we know about killing viruses? Okay, that's a great segue. What do we know about killing viruses? Killing viruses is super easy. Okay, um, you can use acids, you can use high ethanol, you can use Clorox, you can use heat, you can use UV light, you can use soap. This type of virus has a lipid bilayer, and soap really easily kills it. So when you wash your hands, you kind of dissipate this lipid structure and it dies. Okay, so it's very easy to kill viruses. What's difficult is to come up with something that will kill the virus but not affect the host. And that's where it becomes tricky, because we can use Drano and we can kill it, but can we drink Drano? So
Right.
that's what makes it very, very complicated. Um, and that's where in our lab, we specialize in a couple of things. Okay. First, high throughput herbs. What does that mean? Okay. So when we find a badass herb, when we find like an herb that is amazing against viruses, the first thing we do is we grab all of the viruses that we have in our lab, and we test that herb against all of the viruses. Okay, just and so far, we have some results, but nothing that has been reproduced. So I'm not going to say anything, so people don't go buy a bunch of stuff without being completely validated. Okay, um, so we can do the opposite. We can do the reverse. Back when the Zika virus became a problem out of Brazil, and all of those areas, we can do the opposite. We can grab a virus and we have a catalog of a bunch of different herbs, and we can test all those herbs against the virus. Okay, so that's high throughput testing, and that's what we're doing right now. We have a coronavirus, and we're testing all of these herbs to see which ones are effective against it. So high throughput testing. The second thing we are really good once. So let's say we test 100 herbs, okay, and out of those 100 herbs, we have this didn't work, this worked so, and these were gangbusters. So we get let's say out of 110 are amazing. Okay, so then we take those 10 herbs and then we do different extraction methods. So we do high ethanolic, low ethanolic, water, hexene, because that's a very low polarity extraction method. And then so we do all these different extraction methods from very polar to non-polar at all, to try to extract different constituents within the plant. And then we test each one of them. Then we decide, okay, the 70-30 ethanol was the best one. So then we take that, okay, so out of 100, 10 out of 10, we have different extraction methods. Then we take that one extraction method that was the most powerful. And then we start trying to figure out how is the plant affecting the virus. So there's different ways of killing a virus. You can prevent its attachment to the cell. So like the virus has little arms, and with those arms they connect, go inside the cell. Well, you can cover the arms, and that's like things like Abreva. That's how Abreva works. And then we have plants that work like Abreva and it help with the attachment. We can disrupt the DNA.
Abreva is like a flu, like the flu prescription remedy.
No, that's for like HSV, like for
Oh, okay.
for when you have
Okay.
like a cold sore,
Okay.
And then we have things like that go inside the virus and they disrupt the virus replication. Okay. And those are very useful because when you disrupt the viral replication, then the virus becomes completely inactive. And those, and so there's different ways of figuring out how to kill. Now, the problem is this: we have to find things that kill the virus in a novel way that it will not kill the cell. Okay. And that's where it kind of gets tricky. So we have found a bunch of different herbs that are very effective. When the Zika virus was a big problem, okay, we know that the Zika virus is part of the filavirus family, okay, and other filaviruses like dengue and the yellow fever, have a lot of traditional knowledge on what herbs can work against it. Okay, so I know, we know they're cousin viruses, so we start testing those those traditional herbs against Zika, and sure enough, we found herbs that kill Zika. So it's going to be a couple of months, but I'm pretty confident that we're going to find herbs that are going to be effective against the coronavirus.
Okay, so there's been some things I looked up, because as you said, coronavirus, this is just one strain. It showed up before in other ways. Are there some herbs that we've already found to be effective against other coronaviruses?
I'm trying to be very careful with saying anything,
Okay.
because I just don't want to give anyone a false sense of security. And we're testing and retesting, and I think that would be the most responsible thing to do. Okay.
Okay.
We know that there are certain herbs that don't work against it. Sarcenia purpurea, which is a carnivorous plant that has excellent activity against Ebola, against pox, against HSV, and against all these different types of viruses, cancer. It's a DNA disruptor, through a gene, and that's like our star herb, and that herb does not work against corona. So we know that, and that's good information to put out there. But until we have the actual reproducible results, at this point, we are now transitioning like what we don't know.
Right.
This
Okay.
point, there is no treatment that we know of, natural or otherwise, to treat this. So prevention is number one.
Okay, and we can talk more about prevention, and I've been
Yeah.
writing a lot about that. I want to circle back. You did say heat can kill it. I
Yeah.
wonder if you can dig into that more, because there's lots of questions and rumors flying around heat, and will it be killed in the summer? A friend sent me a thing like, can you use a hair dryer up your nose to kill viruses in the nose? I haven't watched the video yet, but I was like, that sounds weird.
So there was a story, because so heat kills it, but we're talking about really high heat,
Like 150
so
degrees or 200
yeah,
degrees? Or...
so viruses, are really funny because they're very fragile, and they dry out really easily, and they decompose really easily. So that's why they kind of like travel in droplets, and like those droplets, they travel and then they land on you, and now this like biological mechanism, keeps them nice and wet, and it keeps them non-dry. When they dry out, they start to decompose, and then they die. That's
Okay.
why alcohol is very effective at killing bacteria in viruses, because it dehydrates things.
Okay.
If you are, so I'm gonna give you an example. Bacteria in the gut, like to die. And if you start taking antimicrobials and for the bacteria in the gut, the bad bacteria go into something called biofilm. And this biofilm is like this lattice of like calcium and different minerals, to kind of shield itself from the antimicrobial. And after the antimicrobial is gone, it just pops back out. So if you are in a moist environment like your sinuses, if you are in a, that virus is going to find a way to kind of like go and hide. Okay. And then when that when that blower, when that hair dryer goes away, it's just going to pop right up again. Now that is a big difference, okay, from some of our immune mechanisms to prevent viruses, and now I'm going to quote a couple of things from our from one of the we know. Okay.
Okay.
So what we know, this is in the Journal of the American Medical Association, and it's called Risk Factors Associated with Acute Respiratory Distress Syndrome, or ARDS, with death in patients with the coronavirus in Wuhan, China. Okay. And one of the things that we found out is that having a fever protected you from the virus. So if you get the virus, okay, and then you have a fever, that's heat. And that's your immune system kind of like, okay, we need to kill this virus. You ramp up the heat, your immune system becomes more active. And then the people that had the higher fevers tended to have the lowest amount of death. Okay. A couple of really curious things. There is a vitamin C trial going on alongside this infection in China, and we're going to have those results around September with IV vitamin C, and let's see how they fared, if they did better than the people that didn't take the vitamin C. Another thing that they're doing in China, and you're going to be very, very happy about this, okay? And let me read it for you, okay? Because I want to quote it exactly as it appears in the Journal of the American Medical Association, okay?
Okay.
Because it's going to make you very happy. Treatment in hospital. Of the 201 patients, 165 in the hospital. In the most, if you needed more oxygen, you were at higher risk, okay? They received empirical antibiotics. So they gave them antibiotics because when you have pneumonia, that liquid in your lungs can turn from, you can have a bacterial infection, okay? Including oseltamivir, which is Tamiflu, okay? More than half, so 52.7% of the patients received antioxidant therapy, including glutathione and N-acetylcysteine. So that's what they're doing over there. They're doing
In
antibiotic. They're doing, it doesn't specify.
Okay.
But they're doing antibiotics to protect you from bacteria. Okay, they're doing antivirals, even though we don't have a clear antiviral that works against this. They were giving you antivirals. They did immunoglobulin therapy. That's when they inject immunoglobulins from someone else to kind of help your immune system. And they use glutathione and they use N-acetylcysteine. How cool is that? Talk about integrative medicine. And then another thing was that we also know that if this is kind of confusing, okay? So if your immune system is suppressed, then you are more likely to get the disease, okay? But on the heaviest of cases, on the cases that were the most dangerous, or the most critical, giving the patient methylprednisone, which is like a corticosteroid, reduce the chances of mortality. And why is that? Okay. Well, one of the things about this type of virus is something that you maybe have heard about, cytokine storms.
Yes.
And that's when your body freaks out and it starts sending a bunch of cytokines, and then they start, you coagulate. Basically, you coagulate your whole body. And that is very bad and very hard to reverse. So the highest risk patients were older patients with high blood pressure, uncontrolled A1C, okay, so high blood glucose, and and their immune system didn't know what the heck to do. Okay, so very, very cautious here, because so yeah, we want to have a good immune system for reasons. And if we have a this infection, we might we have to monitor something called D-dimer, and D-dimer is how well you coagulate. We have to monitor your glucose regulation, and we have to make sure that blood pressure becomes stable. So all those things can help you survive this virus.
Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, I studied in China a long time ago when I was a student, and they've done integrative medicine for a long, long time before we looked at it over here. And I mean, I think we're halfway across the world, but I've read some studies out of there. They use a lot of medical studies out of China, and I'm happy with some of the work that they're doing over there. And we talked earlier about the wet markets, and I also just loved being in China and shopping and eating and all that. And it is part of their culture, but like the world is changing. Things can spread and so quickly,
so rapidly.
So maybe things have to change on that. Interesting. Okay. And do you have any favorites? Like, you have clients. Do you have any favorite things you're recommending to boost immunity?
Okay, so now so what we know, what we don't know, against this thing, we don't know. There is no thing that you can do to 100% prevent this if you are in contact with. We don't know, and it's okay. As a scientist, we are allowed to say that. We're not politicians. At this point, we don't know. Okay, and it's going to change, and then we'll know. Okay, but so what can we do? Okay, so the first and most important thing, and what everyone agrees with, is we need to flatten the curve. What does that mean? Okay, you've heard and you've read people saying, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal," whatever. Okay, so let's say you have, again, 100 patients, and that out of those patients, they all get infected. That one patient needs to go into the ICU. Okay, well, we are already in a shortage of beds in the ICU without a global pandemic. So think about people that have accidents daily, that have that need the ICU bed because they need a lung transplant, or they need a heart transplant, or so those beds are not transferable. It's not like we can just create more beds and create more beds. So what we need to do right now is not tax our hospitals. Not, we need to stay away from hospitals. We need to make sure that we are not influxing more patients into the system, because that's when it becomes a problem. When we have more people that need those critical beds than we have, and now people that had accidents, people that were in car accidents, people, that's where we would start seeing problems, because we would have to put them in a different place, and then we don't have enough respirators, and that's when we see that death rate go up, which is what happened in Italy, and which didn't happen in South Korea. Okay, same problem. South Korea was the second hit geographically. You can think about the trade between China and South Korea, and they had a problem, but they did something very different than what they did in Italy, what they did in Wuhan. They tested, and isolated. Okay, and they didn't need to lock down the city, which Italy did, which China did. We can be as disciplined, and we don't have to have mandatory curfews, and we just use our common sense, and we kind of stop and only have the necessary contact, outside of our family and friends. Okay, so something that we have talked for a very, very long time, what can you do to have a good, robust immune system or just overall health? Remember, A1C, coagulation, inflammation, and your blood pressure are the most important factors, risk factors, whether you're 60 and above or below. Okay, those are the most important things that you can do to protect yourself against coronavirus. What lowers those things? Sleep, exercise, and a good diet. We should have been doing this, from the beginning. Okay, so let's say you have those in control and you still want to do even a little bit better. Well, micronutrient status, good levels of things like zinc, selenium, magnesium, vitamin C, as an antioxidant, low levels. So vitamin D is super important, for many reasons. And getting it from the sun is the most important way of getting it. But there has been shown that small doses daily can protect you against respiratory disease. So vitamin D. And I'm not saying 10,000 IUs because there's a coronavirus. No. 1,000 IUs, just whatever's on your multi, taken daily is going to be protective against respiratory disease, because we don't, having too high a level of vitamin D in your blood can be very bad for you. Okay. And then, washing your hands, all of that stuff, let's pretend that we know all of that, the basic stuff. And then you can use different herbs if you want to, kind of like have a good immune system. You can use things like Echinacea, Astragalus, Andrographis, things like that, things that are not going to be antimicrobial. The last thing you want to do right now is take antimicrobial herbs. Why? Because antimicrobial herbs can go into your system and they will disrupt your gut bacteria. Okay. And if you don't have good gut health, you're not going to have good overall health. Also, these antimicrobial herbs are going to kind of expose different viruses and different bacteria to more antimicrobials. We wouldn't take a Z-Pack right now, I'm perfectly healthy. I'm going to self-isolate. I want to take a little bit of a Z-Pack daily to help me get through this. You wouldn't do that because we know that affects the gut. So we also shouldn't be taking grapefruit seed extract. We shouldn't be taking eucalyptus. We shouldn't be taking sage.
Yeah, because sage oil is actually one they recommend for cleaning surfaces.
So that's different. That's completely
right,
different.
You're not ingesting it. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Grapefruit seed extract, colloidal silver, all of those things that are antimicrobial, you don't need them. You don't need them unless you have an infection and you are being seen by a doctor that knows what to do. Okay. So if you are being seen by a practitioner that knows their stuff and they are telling you, okay, you have an infection, then you can start taking antimicrobials. Up until that point, you should avoid anything that kills bacteria, because you are just exposing yourself to risk by doing things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. We are doing some experiments at school with essential oils, and we have discovered that the essential oils, when they get aerosolized, they can disrupt biofilms and they can disrupt bacteria. Never ingested. They are very harsh and they can damage your cause ulcers and stuff like that. But hey, if you have a diffuser, maybe turn on your diffuser. Wash your hands. Do all those things, and then be safe and let's use a lot of common sense and be very, very critical of anyone that's telling you, I have the cure, this is what you do for coronavirus. We don't know.
Okay, yeah, I like some of those tips about, exercising, eating well, getting your micronutrients. I feel like we all feel like we're trapped inside, but actually we can go outside.
We can go outside. Yeah, we can go outside.
Relax.
Practice social distancing. I was at Whole Foods yesterday, and I just went and because like Sunday nights I make a big dinner. That's my thing. I make a big dinner, buy like a nice bottle of wine, and I make a nice dinner. And people were so respectful. Everyone, without having to tell anyone, was keeping their distance. I was thinking in my head, don't cough the whole time. It's like, dude. But yeah, everyone kept their distance. The shelves were kind of empty, which was kind of freaky, just like right before a hurricane.
Yeah.
But they had signs on their freezer, you're only allowed to buy 2 bags of frozen vegetables at a time. So they were practicing some rationing, which is good, and just protecting others. There's in Austria, I think, some grocery stores are gonna open their doors from like 2 hours for elderly people only.
Oh, that's really
So
great. I love
how
that.
awesome is that? So they can go in and because it's crazy. It breaks my heart to see all these people that were like hoarding, and then you see now elderly people having to expose themselves and go from store to store to store because they can't have things that are completely useless in a global pandemic, like toilet paper. You can take a shower, if shit hits the fan, that you can take a shower and you're gonna be okay. But
True.
it was like this herd mentality where people were like, we got to stock up toilet paper, and it just exponentially grew, and now toilet paper is very scarce. But in reality, when it comes to a global pandemic, there are better things to hoard than toilet paper.
Yeah, I said that yesterday on a live. I was like, I follow, I don't know if you've heard of this spiritual teacher, Matt Kahn, but he put one of the nicest posts I've seen out about this. And, while we are huddled up with our families at home, or, having a different routine, like, let's look out for each other. If you've got neighbors who don't get out much, or neighbors who didn't like get something, like, help people out, because it isn't the end of the world, and we don't need to
No.
be so unkind to each other right now.
Yeah, it's so amazing. You want to talk a little bit about preparedness?
Sure.
Okay, so not a conspiracy theorist here or whatever, but I like to be prepared. Okay, so in my top 10 things to do, get a Berkey filter. Those filters last like 5 years. Okay, and they can filter swamp water without any input of energy or anything. It's a gravity filter. That's just good to have in Arizona because our water is so hard that you just having clean water is important. So getting a good filtration system. I always keep a little bit of rice and dried beans. Those things can last for a very long time. I'm a paleo guy. I eat meat, but if something really happened where supply chains like really drop, I have a gallon of coconut oil, and
Nice.
I have rice and beans. And that gallon of coconut oil is 10,000, of calories. And then, mixing rice and beans can make a complete protein, not as absorbable as other types of protein, but I can eat for a month, as long as I can. And then if I have clean water, that's pretty much, a lot of my needs and my family's needs have been met, and,
Right.
and it's something that, let's say you buy a big bag, of rice and a big bag of dried beans, and, they have an expiration date of around 2.5 years, 3 years. So let's say it's the second, year 2, and you're not going to use it. You can take it to a food bank and give it away, and then buy another 20. It's like $20 for, you know, for a big bag of rice. And being prepared is not crazy, you know, because you don't know what could happen. You know, we could have, you know, our grid, you know, our power grid could go down, and we could have, you know, like what happened in New York in the early 2000s. I don't know if you remember, where they were out of power for weeks, you know. And I learned this from living in Florida and living through hurricanes and being without power for, you know, 7 days at one time after 3 hurricanes hit back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
And you know, and it's important to know, you know, to be conscious about this, because you never know. I don't think this is the end of the world. I don't think, but I can hunker down, and if the supply chains, you know, fall through, I got a month of food that I can utilize.
Yeah. It's a whole, it's interesting we're having this conversation about the hurricanes, because there are people who have had to think about this, but then there's a whole bunch of other of us who've never had to really think about this. So I like the coconut oil one, because you need fat for cooking. Like it's just
and
make
you
life
know,
a lot more tasty.
or just, you know, or having just a tablespoon of it. You know, it's not doesn't have a lot of nutrients, but it has calories, and at some point you have to make do, you know. And then the Berkey filter is pretty cool, because even if there's not running water, you know, we have a pool, you know, our complex has a pool, so you can filter that pool water. You know, it's not optimal, it's not the best thing ever, but that Berkey filter is going to get you clean water. So that's something that even for, you know, day-to-day life, I use it. It's one of my favorite appliances in my house. And I don't make commission off of them. But it's just such a cool thing to have, and it's double purpose because it can save lives.
Yeah, really cool. Well, I just want to ask you one more thing before we let you go. You talked a little bit about antimicrobial herbs, and that you started out with studying those. And I mentioned it's a question I get a lot in my community, and I haven't found a great answer to online. So I just love for you to sum up kind of both sort of the dangerous power of antibacterial herbs, both in this like time of pandemic and just in the world of natural medicine where we are using them frequently. What are some cautions we should have?
Yeah, so our medicine works. Okay, that's the number one thing that I want to say, because if it didn't work, I wouldn't be here talking about it. Okay, I wouldn't be here telling you or telling anyone, let's be cautious about this. You know, let's exercise caution when we prescribe or when we take an antimicrobial, whether it's natural or it's not. More people are going to die from resistant bacterial infections than from cancer and from heart disease. You know, bacteria is going to get us. They change. They become resistant to different things. Okay. The answer to this problem could be thousands of plant species that we have. Okay. And we are, you know, our lab is working really hard to try to identify the best plants with antimicrobial activity, the best extraction methods, and how to utilize them. Okay. If we are able to find this and create a new type of antimicrobial that can kill something that is resistant to everything else, we're talking about saving the world. Okay. And what ends up happening is that anytime there is good research about a new compound or a new plant that has antimicrobial activity, because these plants and these extractions are not well regulated, there's a bunch of different new, you know, supplements that come to market really fast, and people take for whatever reason. And when it comes to antimicrobials, you should be, and you should know, you know, how to use them and when to use them. Think about it this way. Let's say you have a bottle of water. You know, how many people do you know that put, you know, a couple of drops of essential oil into their water and they drink it throughout the day. Well, those, as we know, those essential oils have antimicrobial activity. Do you want to take low dose antimicrobial day? And this is regardless of all the other cool things that plants do. For example, lavender. Lavender can calm you down. Lavender has really cool properties. Lavender also kills viruses in a very specific way. Do you want to take something daily in your water that is training viruses to become resistant? You know, and this is completely a part of its calming effects. Now, traditionally, you can use lavender as, like put it in your palms and inhale it, and that has some of those calming effects. And that's without you having to ingest it. Okay. So we need to be very careful that we're not taking these low dose antimicrobials for long terms. Now, for example, let's say someone has SIBO, let's say someone has dysbiosis, okay? That's when we can harness the power of these natural antimicrobials and kill this bacteria and do anti-inflammatory things and do some of the herbs that we use against bacteria in the gut have also digestive properties and anti-inflammatory properties, all of these different cool things. Just know that those antimicrobial protocols should have a determinate time frame. This is not a forever thing. No one should be taking antimicrobials low dose for the rest of their lives, just like no one should be taking penicillin, no one should be taking Tamiflu, no one should be taking Cipro, no one should be taking ampicillin long term. So we need to make sure that we as natural practitioners and anyone listening, we need to make sure that whenever you take an antimicrobial herb, we do it for a determined amount of time under the supervision of someone. Now, let me add one more thing, okay? Medicine doesn't happen by chance, and this is to our advantage. We're talking about sage earlier today and how sage can be really good at making, medicine, okay? Well, what we found in our lab is that in order to make medicine, you have to have the purpose of making medicine, okay? Cooking with sage, putting sage on your gluten-free pasta, is very different than making sage as a medication, okay? So our ancestors, our grandmothers, they were using sage and, using all the phytonutrients and using all of these different things, to nourish our bodies. But when someone got sick, you took that sage and you had to process it in a very specific way with purpose to make it an antimicrobial. Okay. So sage over your food is not going to be the same effect as sage that has been extracted with ethanol or glycerin or an essential oil, or, so I'm not saying stop using these herbs, culinarily or for different reasons. What I'm saying is that don't take extractions specifically made for antimicrobial activity on a daily basis.
Yeah, that really helps answer the question. We use a lot of those for gut infections and stuff, but it's always for a limited time. We do sell a toothpaste, and people have asked about that. I do think it's a little different in your mouth because there's so much coming in. There's so, and you can maybe weigh in, but there's so much exposure, and it's like you use a toothpaste and you spit it out. You're not really actively getting it into your microbiome. So, we do offer a toothpaste that has some antibacterial herbs, but I don't know. I think the use is a little different, kind of like you're talking about with food. You're not just taking a whole tincture full into your stomach.
And there are biofilms in our mouth, that we need to clean daily. And there is some bad bacteria that causes caries and oil pulling, using oil pulling. One of the ways that it works is by disrupting the biofilm in the bacteria and disrupting the lipid bilayer in and the different bacteria in your mouth. So, we wash our hands, and we wash our hands, and we disinfect them. So
Right. And then you're disrupting too, but sometimes a little disruption is maybe good, right?
yeah. So, we don't want to have bad breath, and the bacteria that causes bad breath, happens to be, bacteria that needs to be killed. We were talking during this interview about deodorant. The bacteria that causes the bad smell, it's bacteria that needs to be disrupted. So there's different things that we can do to. There's uses for everything. It's just not ingesting it continuously and doing that. Like for example, having a little bit of an antimicrobial soap. So having a little bit of soap with like rosemary or sage, that could be good. As long as you're not eating it, that could be very good.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good. We're saying, we're not saying like you have to be super paranoid about these things, but especially ingesting antibacterials. And I don't know if you know this, but I'm a big essential oil girl, but I've never been like that into ingesting them unless you need it to be in your mouth and your stomach for a certain reason. Like otherwise, why are we putting it in there?
So there's two big schools of essential oils: the British school and the French school. And like that, the big, like the people that actually made the curriculum, because essential oils have been used for, but like the classical training. And in the French school, only one essential oil is to be taken orally, and that's rosemary. And even that is just for short term. In every other essential oil should not be taken. In according to that French school. Essential oils are difficult to produce. They require a lot of biomass. And they're very, very. So we should be very careful. Those little vials should last you a very, very long time. But yeah, essential oils are amazing. It's just respect, like everything, just respect.
Yeah, that's a good motto with them, because they are incredibly powerful, but like sucking them down right now just because we're in the corona. Like, if you're stuck at home and you can't get tested and like you're really sick, then yeah, maybe you take it to the next level. But otherwise, just use them to clean the countertops or clean the air if people, to use a diffuser if people have been over to your house or something. That's really safe. So
Yeah.
well, thank you so much, Dr. Ruiz, for your time. We're going to get this all organized and make it on YouTube as well. And I just want people to get this information. It's just, so fortunate that you've studied some of these things and you're a naturopath. You've got like, your own angle on it too. And, I appreciate you saying to eat well, be healthy, take your vitamins, because frankly, there's also a different opinion online, like nothing helps. And like, that's all
that is not true either.
That's not true either. Yeah, there's a middle road.
Yeah, there is a middle road, and hopefully people are tuning into Facebook like this have been on the road for a while.
Yes. So we will post more links to his info later, but do you want to share where people can find you and share about your podcast? If people
I 4 years ago. Okay, so I've been talking about this for a very long time, and 4 years ago, I put together a resource called the top remedies for your natural medicine cabinet. And it's this compilation of natural things that you can do that are not antimicrobial, because I've been talking about this antimicrobial thing for a very long time. And if you go to my website, 3030strong, 3030strong.com, you can get it for free. You can download the PDF. It has recipes. And then I also have a podcast, 3030health.com. And episode 113 was on coronavirus. Okay. And so if you want to listen to it again, that's another 45 minutes of me talking about the coronavirus. I love viruses. They're fun little things. And I think that being informed is the number one thing. Keep an eye on those numbers. kind of be a skeptic and just take care of yourself and your family, and call people, call your mom, FaceTime your parents, your grandparents. I'm sure they're going to be happy to see your face if in this time.
Yeah, I want to make a list of like 10 things or 100 things you could do, while you're stuck at home, because there's still like so much we can do. And
Pop some burpees.
yeah, do some burpees. In the health industry, there's a lot we can do. I feel like we're all going to be interviewing each other all the time. And I think it's great. It's a new situation for everyone, but let's take advantage and let's support our loved ones and, like do some projects, read that book you've been meaning to read.
Yeah, cook something awesome.
Yeah, get out, dust off your cookbook, see what you
Yeah.
learn how to cook dried beans. It's great.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a video on that one.
Yeah, the Weston A. Price recipe of dried beans is my favorite. Learn, make some dried beans, use that Instant Pot that you got 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like stay home and cook delicious food. That's a great thing to do. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and thanks again, Dr. Ruiz, for your time, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
We will. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.